I told him, I said, it's going to take more of a man to walk out of this apartment and pay for what you did than it is to go out of this apartment with guns and lose your life over. So the choice is yours.
Imagine for a moment that someone is holding you hostage. You know they have killed 4 people. They really have nothing to live for. And after spending 7 hours wondering if that person was going to end your life, they suddenly set you free. Ashley Smith talks about what that feels like in the final part of her story. Why didn't you run in those moments? What was it? Were you motivated by fear, or was it some knowledge that I'm going to get out of this?
I think looking back on it, even times when I read the book or watch the movie, even myself, I'm like, go girl, you need to get out of there. You got a chance. But I think several things went through my mind at that point in time. Number one, my car was not, it wasn't a very good car. It had been breaking down on a very regular basis. And I think I feared that if I tried to get away, that it would immediately break down and I would be stuck.
It was too risky.
Also, I really believe that God, once I chose not to do the drugs, God took control and he began to lead that night. And for me, I think I just kept saying, eventually he will let me go. If I let him get in the car and go back to my apartment, then he's not going to have a getaway car. He's going to be at my house all by himself at one point, and he'll be surrounded. And so I think those things were just going through my head.
We saw the clip of Kate Mara playing you, and it looked like a rehab
Yes.
attempt. She throws the book, you throw the book in the garbage. Did that really happen?
No, that didn't really happen.
Had anybody introduced the book to you?
Yes, The Purpose-Driven Life had been introduced to me. It actually was introduced to me at a church that I went to. It was actually the very first time I had been to church in many years.
The first time someone introduced the book, A Purpose-Driven Life, to you, what, if any, effect did it have on you?
It actually did have an effect on me. On the cover of The Purpose-Driven Life, it says, "What on earth are we here for?" For me, I needed an answer to that question. As a matter of fact, as I sat in church that day before they had introduced the book, I began to say, God, I don't even know why I'm here at this church service. I shouldn't be here. I'm not worthy of being here. But, I want my life to change, but I don't know how. I'm in this place to where I just get up and do drugs. It's not because I want to, but it's just the way of life. That's what I do to survive, and I want to change. And right about that time, the pastor said, the church is going to be reading this book, and if you want one, then they're so much money, and if you don't have the money, then please get one anyway.
Wow.
And so I picked it up and started to read it.
What made you pull it out and start reading it to Brian Nichols that night?
Well, I happened to be reading it. I was on the 32nd chapter. I'd been reading it for 32 days. And after I chose not to do the drugs, I felt a huge need to back up my decision with scripture or something that involved God. And so I asked Brian Nichols if I could read, and he said, yeah, you can read if you read it out loud. And he made me read it out loud to him.
The passage you read was from the chapter, as you mentioned, 32, using what God gave you. And it reads in part, using what God gave you, what you are is God's gift to you. What you do with yourself is your gift to God. God deserves your best. He shaped you for a purpose and expects you to make the most of what you have been given. That resonated with him.
It did, yes.
He asked you follow-up questions. Tell us.
Well, we had been talking before that about each other. Had asked about his family. He had asked about mine, and I had already told him that my first husband, was killed and things like that. And so he said, maybe you need to minister to people. Maybe you need to share your life with them to help other people. He also asked me what I thought he should do. Should he turn himself in, and what should he do? And I told him he had to turn himself in, and maybe his purpose in life was to minister to people in prison.
Do you know whether he's now doing that?
I don't.
You haven't had any contact with him?
I haven't had any contact with him, but if I were to have contact with him, that would be the biggest question I would ask him. Is he using his second chance?
So now we're getting ahead of ourselves, because we're still back on this night in March of 2005. You read him the passage. The night goes on. You wind up making him pancakes in the morning. How did you get out?
He just let me go. I had been asking all night long from the very beginning. I was supposed to see Paige the next morning.
Your daughter.
Yes, and I kept telling him, I'm supposed to see her. Listen, if I don't show up to this meeting, then people are going to wonder. My family's going to say, this is strange. She's never missed a meeting with Paige, and they're going to come looking for me. And for many times when I asked, several times he said, no, you're not going anywhere, no. And as the night went on, he started to kind of change his mind. When I would ask him, maybe I'll let you go, we'll see how it goes. And about 9 o'clock that morning, he said, what time do you need to leave to see Paige? And of course I was like, now is a really good time.
And he
just let me leave.
Describe the feeling when you closed that door behind you.
You know, when I closed the door behind me, it still was too good to be true. My knees were just shaking as I walked to the car. And I think when I finally got in the car, cranked it and made it around the corner, it was like a sigh of relief, you know, like, wow. Kind of almost, did that just happen? And then realizing, yes, it happened. And even more so, I think I walked away going, that just completely changed my life.
You called 911.
I did. I called 911.
Were you there when the law enforcement officers arrived?
Actually, they told me to go back and go to a safe place, and they sent some officers to meet me there. They didn't send any other officers until they were sure it was him, and I had to take them to find the truck. And after that, it was, when we got back, there were helicopters, SWAT team. I mean, it was people everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Describe the, I mean, I'm trying to get sort of to the point of before and after. Is there, the Ashley Smith who was there before that encounter, is she still with us?
I'm not in a spiritual warfare anymore. I'm not fighting that anymore. You know, the person that was there that night was still a human being. I think she is still there because that person was a sinner saved by God's grace. Today, I'm still just a sinner saved by God's grace. You know, that night, I laid down my brokenness to God and I gave it to Him. That's what changed.